Wild weekend in the sport. Number one, Auburn lost for the first time in 66 days. Number two, Duke lost for the first time in 74 days. I watched college basketball all Saturday in between, family stuff here and there. And I can't tell you, Norlander, how many times I saw somebody on television say definitively this weekend that because of what happened Saturday to Auburn and Duke, there will be a new number one in the AP poll on Monday. And sure, there might be. I'm not in charge of the AP poll or AP voters. No telling what them goofies might do. But the idea that it's just automatic that there will be a new number one in the AP poll on Monday seems like a little bit of a leap to me, or even that there should be one, because as I've argued in recent weeks, Auburn has been so far ahead of the field, but that I thought at least they could take a reasonable loss and still maintain their spot at the top of the AP poll. We'll find out tomorrow. But Norlander, let me ask you, we'll start right here. Do you agree with that sentiment, or do you want to argue and name call?
Not going to argue, not going to name call. The only intrigue with the number one, who number one is on Sunday or Monday, doesn't matter to me whatsoever. It's about your resume. There was some intrigue if maybe it was going to be Duke, because people might not realize Duke has not been number one in the AP top 25 since 2018-19 or 2017-18. The 2017-18 season was the last time Duke hit number one. No, I'm lying to you. It was 21-22. Sorry, my data was messed up there. Point is, it hasn't been recently, and that would have been intriguing. Like they get there for the first time under John Shire and all that. I would pick Auburn there. I actually think there's a healthy chance it will be Auburn. Alabama winning narrowly. I'm more interested in how those games were played, how they were won, how they were lost, because the resume is what's going to matter, and Auburn still has by far and away the best resume. So if Auburn's not number one, I'm not going to care. Honestly, I won't care a single bit if Auburn's not number one. But if you're asking me who should be number one, I think it should be Auburn. And I do have a trivia time for you.
Go.
When's the last time the number one ranked team in the country lost but remained number one in the subsequent AP Top 25 poll? Year in school. And I'll give you a hint. It's happened within the past 5.
Yeah, I would not have known this, if I'm being honest. I think I saw it on Twitter last night. I think it's Gonzaga in whatever year.
It is not.
Okay, well, somebody said that on Twitter, so they're a liar. Whoever that was, that's a lie.
I asked our research team at HQ on Saturday night last night. It was Purdue in 2023. They were number one the week of January 30th of 2023. And so basically almost 2 years to the day. The subsequent poll, February 6th, 2023, they remain number one despite losing. That should be what happens with Auburn. If it doesn't, I mean, honestly, whatever, it would mean Alabama doesn't. And the bigger picture is this. Auburn's going to play Alabama next week. It's going to be in Tuscaloosa. There's we'll know it for sure on Monday, but there's a healthy chance that we will get a number 1 versus 2 matchup. And if indeed that is the case, I'll have more for you on contextualizing how often we get that on the Monday show. We have a podcast on Monday on CBS Sports Network, just as a heads up. We'll have more on that tomorrow.
Yeah, obviously, I think it should be Auburn number 1. I've been making the case for weeks. I left Auburn atop the top 25 and 1. And again, I can't promise you or not promise you what AP voters will do, broadly speaking. But if they do it right, I think it should be Auburn number 1, Alabama number 2, and we should have 1 versus 2.
I think that will happen, by the way, Parrish. I think Auburn's going to stay number 1. That's just my hunch.
I have it Auburn 1, Alabama 2, Tennessee 3, Duke 4, Florida 5. Those would be my 4 number 1 seeds: Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, Duke. That lines up with what Jerry Palm has in his updated bracket as of this morning. His 2s are Florida, Houston, Texas A&M, and Purdue. Mine would be Florida, Houston, Purdue, and St. John's. We'll get to the Red Storm eventually. But let me ask you this. Can you envision a scenario? Because I was close to doing – there's a debate between Duke and Florida, at least in my mind, from a resume perspective. Can you envision a scenario where all 4 number 1 seeds are from the SEC, or is that too much? That's too much.
I got asked that in the mailbag on my court report like 3 weeks ago. I can't get there. There's going to be one team that takes too many losses, and you've got too many teams that are in that conversation that I think are going to remain there. Although, Duke losing at Clemson, it's a small thing, but I actually think that Duke now has probably no room for error left. Like it would probably actually truly have to run the table to get the number 1 overall seed, but it's still going to have a chance at a 1 seed. But had it won on the road at Clemson, I thought that was a very valuable Q1 opportunity to have on the resume when the ACC doesn't have a ton there. So, just a little, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but, number one overall seed, it's a huge point of pride. Alabama's gotten it recently. Auburn's on track to do it right now. The Florida Duke debate is intriguing. Palm said last night when we did a bracketology hit on HQ, he said the Tennessee and the Auburn wins are really, really good. And I think what he said, and I haven't dug into it, I think he said Florida's next best win is like an 11 seed in the bracket right now. So they've got two tremendous wins, and overall, like, the resume is strong. But if you're looking for a really strong third win right now, they just don't have it. Now they're going to have chances to get it. They're going to have plenty of chances. But as we stand here on Sunday, they don't necessarily have it. Keep going with your thought on that in terms of ranking and where you stand. And, oh, by the way, who do you think? Like, do you still think, this is our poll question right now on the YouTube chat, do you think Auburn is the best team in the country? Do you, if you had to pick any team to win a neutral tomorrow against any other team in the country, Auburn would still be your number one regardless of resume status?
Probably, but I don't even think in those terms. Like, I get real picky about people asking me about who's the best team in the country or who deserves whatever, because I think those answers can be different. I mean, I could tell you on one hand, I think Duke might be the best team in the country, all things considered. But I can also tell you Duke has nothing close to the best resume in the country and should not be ranked over Auburn in any scenario, even though Duke does own a win over Auburn. So it would be Auburn or Duke. I would take one of those two as the, quote, best team in the country. But in terms of rankings, and thank you for not getting the Jersey Mike's low. They paid good money for that. I'm glad we're not covering it up anymore. Hey, Jersey Mike's, send us a big check, and then we're going to cover up your logo. It should be Auburn ahead of Duke and everybody else, and it's not even close if you're ranking resumes, and which is not entirely what I do, but largely what I do. Auburn 21-2, 12-2 in quadrant one. I mean, that's so they're like a golfer with a 4-shot lead on the field. I mean, that's what this is. 21-2 overall, 12-2 in quadrant one. Just to run you through the other contenders so I can illustrate how, if you're out there tweeting, there's no way Auburn should still be number one. You just don't know what you're talking about. Alabama's 20-3, 7-3 in quadrant one. So Auburn has one fewer loss overall. All of these schools that I'm about to name, they have no losses outside of quadrant one. So they've got all strong resumes. But Auburn has one fewer loss than Alabama and 5 more quadrant one wins. It's not close. Tennessee's 20-4 overall, 8-4 in quadrant one. So Auburn's got 4 more quadrant one wins and 2 fewer losses. Duke 20-3 overall, 5-3 in quadrant one. So Auburn's got 1 fewer loss and 7 more quadrant one wins. Florida 20-3 overall, 4-3 in quadrant one. So Auburn's got 1 fewer loss and 8 more quadrant one wins. Again, it's just not even close. And every once in a while, I'll say things either here or on radio or television, wherever, like the SEC is not only the best conference in the country, but could go down as the greatest league in the history of the sport. And sometimes people push back on that like it's an absurd thing to say. It's just not. Right now, the SEC's conference rating at KenPom is plus 21.63. Last season, the Big 12 ranked number one at plus 16.66. So this is like way better than that. The highest conference rating in the history of the KenPom database is plus 21.37. That's the ACC in 1997. That league got 9 bids to the NCAA tournament. Right now, the SEC is currently rating better than that. And according to Jerry Palm, projected to get 12 teams in the NCAA tournament. And another SEC team is his first team out. So we're closer to 13 than we probably are 11 at this point with the SEC. It really might be the best league ever. And that's why 4 of my top 5 teams and 6 of my top 10 are from the SEC right now.
Which result to you, I don't know, did you find more intriguing? Which game? Auburn, take the top 2. I mean, listen, Tennessee went on the road. It's not in the number one conversation, but, top 5 team. It had no issue with Oklahoma. Congrats to the Vols. I think there is something to that, but it wasn't an issue. Alabama gets a late push from Arkansas. They win 87-81. Alabama has now won 5 in a row against the Hogs, by the way, GP. And Bama continues to lead the country in scoring. They're at 90 points flat per game. Arkansas did get a scare, and Big Z had his best game in a Hogs uniform. But the Razorbacks, that was one where if you could have gotten the win, then we really might have had something. But as it stands, I mean, you got to win at least 4, maybe probably at least 5 more games against SEC competition to have an at-large resume. Let's talk about the top 2 teams and how they lost. Duke goes on the road, loses at Clemson. Clemson has a nice little push from about the 14-minute mark or so until about the 8-minute mark where Duke doesn't score. Clemson's on a 12-0 run. They get the edge there. It winds up being crucial because it's just enough for them to hang on. Meantime, Auburn got out early against Florida, and then Florida just it took it to them. I mean, Florida looked ready to play. Bruce Pearl, I don't know if you heard the clips afterward. We played them on the Overnight HQ show where Pearl said essentially Florida looked like they needed the game because if they didn't win it, they didn't have any chance at winning a regular season title in the SEC. We didn't look like a team that prepared. We weren't a team that prepared. We didn't look ready. This can't happen again. Like we were due. This was due. The bill was going to come due behind the scenes if we had been winning games, but Pearl was basically saying in my heart of heart, I knew that if we did not have everything buttoned up, someone was going to come in and pick us off. That's exactly what Florida did. So take it where you want between those two. I'm just wondering, of the two of those, which game and or result, how it played out, did you find more compelling?
Florida going to Auburn and controlling much of the game. To me, like it got to a point whether it was halftime, there's 15 minutes left, 10 minutes left. We got to a point where it's like, can Auburn get back in this thing? Can Auburn make this competitive in the final minutes? Florida went into arguably the most difficult place to play given environment and opponent and won the game convincingly. And I know that there's got to be at least one Florida fan out there going, okay, I hear you, GP. That's nice to hear. But you had Florida 5th in the top 25 and won on Saturday. You still got them 5th. There's just nowhere for them to go. That's the issue. I do not think they should crack the top 4 right now. But that was the most impressive victory of the weekend and a real statement from Todd Golden's program that they went in there and played the team that is rated as the best in the country on their home floor and handled them. I don't want to say no problem, but handled them.
I mean, they did handle them. Remember, no Elijah Martin in this game. Walter Clayton was able to come back. He played well. I thought Alex Condon and Thomas Houck were huge. In fact, they were collectively much better than I would have thought going into the game. Broom did okay for himself. We can do a Broom flag here thing in just a second. But Condon and Houck were so sturdy. Clayton had 19 points, 9 boards, 6 assists. He had 4 threes. He comes back from injury. Looks really, really good. By the way, this is the first time Florida's ever beaten a number 1 team on the road. It's the first time Florida's ever been in a top 10 matchup where both teams were in the top 10 and Florida was on the road in that situation and won a game. It was 0-11 prior to getting this done. And now Florida is 2-0 this season against AP number 1 teams. Obviously, the Tennessee one last month being the other one. Coming into this season, Florida was 2-17 all time against number 1 teams, and yet here within the context of this season, it's 2-0. So those are 2 really, really good wins. Got to get that next third one that's at that upper echelon. It's almost certainly gonna get there. But the battling back from 10 points down was really impressive, and we are seeing Florida, when operating at its highest level, national championship good. To me, the most impressive thing is that Elijah Martin is such a versatile perimeter defender, super switchable. He wasn't even in this game, and they were able to get the win. For the Auburn end of it, I said this on the HQ desk on Saturday. There's now been 2 instances here. I saw it in person in Maui when they got down against Iowa State by 18 points and they came back and won. Now they get down again huge here against Florida and they don't win it. There's now been 2 instances where they have seen how teams have come in and they can kick their ass. Because Auburn, top to bottom, depth-wise, I would still pick them as the best team in the country right now. And if you ask me to project a month from now as we're getting ready to have the bracket, who do you will think at that point will be the best team in the country? I'm still going to say it's Auburn. But I think it's beneficial to Bruce Pearl and that program that they now have been in these instances a couple of times. And this was the reminder of, don't let this happen again, because the top of the sport is too good, guys. We're not that much better than everyone else. So if you think that we can kind of just show up with our battery at 80 to 85 or 90% and think that's going to be good enough, that's not the case whatsoever. There are 6 or 7 teams that can still come in, punch us in the mouth, and walk out with the victory. So I thought that was pretty crucial. On the Clemson Duke angle, the plot twist here was that Cooper Flagg was not an impactful player for the first 34 minutes of the game. He got to a point where he was 2 of 11. I did wonder if he was going to truly have a stinker, and then he comes to life. He had a stretch where he had 10 consecutive points, a couple of big time threes in the midst of that as well. Proctor had an outrageous 3 that got Duke back into it after Clemson had taken the lead. Remember, these teams played a close game a year ago. Duke won it at Littlejohn. Proctor hit a big foul shot with like a second to go. So there was some year-over-year carryover with some players that have been involved in both of these games, but Clemson gets it done. Flag slips on the floor. It is an unfortunate situation. There have now been 3 Duke losses this season, and every single loss, Cooper Flagg has been tasked with taking the ball and making the play to either tie it or win it. And with 3 different variations, it just hasn't happened. He's had a mistake. Now it's a wet spot on the floor. What are you going to do? It was actually a trip and slip and unintentional. Flagg was looking to make a move. Shefflin's foot was there first, and then Flagg's toe just hits him. So he stumbles a little bit. Then he slips and falls and prevents what would have been, I think if Duke had won the game, probably would have been the second biggest moment of Flagg's season so far after being Parrish just such a jag for the majority of the game, and credit to Clemson for obviously how it's scouted. Then he really was like ready to take over, and if Duke had maintained an undefeated status in the ACC, I think it would have been a different deal altogether. But no, instead Duke shoots a season low, 38.7% from the floor. Clemson has now won 5 consecutive games at home when facing a top 5 team. That's an incredible streak, and on Saturday it was the first time since 2001 when the team was North Carolina that Clemson defeated a top 2 opponent.
We got and I tweeted this, it was just a sweet moment. It was just a perfect college basketball moment. You get the leading candidate to be National Player of the Year, I think, making this big 3 in the final minute on the road to give Duke a lead. And there's Dick Vitale on the mic.
So
and he hit us with a, "Are you serious?" I'd like that. I had sort of just forgotten about "Are you serious?" You know,
are you serious?
Yeah, I had just sort of forgotten about that. I think.
I love it. It was so great, Parrish, that he got this. He got this, and he got the court storm, and he got all of it. By the way, keep going. We got to stop turning. I'm more open and okay with court storming than GP. You can't be turning off the lights. You can't be flashing them up and down. You got hundreds and thousands of people. You can't. I'm good with it, but there's been a couple of arenas that have done this. We got to stop this. I don't know someone's got to be given the okay to, hey, if this happens, can I go with the old the disco situation? Can't be a thing. Continue.
I update in my new approach to life. I've stopped caring about court stormings. Okay. I'm telling you, I will never care again. I will never say another word about them until something really bad happens. Then I'll say, I tried to tell y'all, but y'all kept telling me to shut up. So here we are. But until then, I'm just going to let it happen. I'm not even going to comment on it. I
said it was one hell of a storm. That's how you get on a court. It was covered in 7 seconds. So
yeah. Incredible scene. Cooper Flagg was not, that wasn't his best game, but he did have that moment. And that moment could have been you let the next 55 seconds play out differently. That could have been a moment in his one and done career. As it is, great win for Clemson. I did get Brad Brownhouse Tigers back into the top 25-1. There at number 26. Did anything that happened, and then we'll move on because we probably should. Did anything that happened this weekend change your opinion about the National Player of the Year race at all? It was just a week ago, I guess you used the court report to talk about this as a 1-2 race, unlike things we've really never seen. And then Player of the Year, it's the same 2 teams, same 2 players, and this is where we're headed. Anything that happened this weekend change your calculation?
Only slightly, but when we did the Tuesday show on CBS SN, you took Flagg in that moment. I took Broom. I think that if Flagg is out just a little bit, I think that Broom made it even tighter, if not having a little bit of a lead, just purely from the day that both teams lost, obviously. Broom's team lost to the better team, but Flagg's team had to go on the road. Broom had 18 points, 11 boards, 6 assists, 2 blocks. Flagg had 18 points, 5 boards, 1 assist, 3 steals, 1 block. And if you want to be cynical about it, one game-changing slip on that. But both lost. Flagg, he had... As I said, he started 2 from 11 from the field. He had 14 points in the final 6 minutes of the game after only having 4 leading up to that. So I think the gap was narrowed. If you want to believe Flagg had the lead, I think it was slightly made just a little bit tighter. But this is the good part. We've hit the stage here where, and I'm not saying that no one else can possibly get there. Take a look at what Braden Smith's numbers are. And if Purdue does separate, I'm willing to have that conversation if we can get there in a couple weeks. But right now with these 2, this is where we're at. How'd this guy do? Okay, how'd this guy do? Okay, the next night this guy's playing. Let's see where we're at. That's what makes it really, really cool. And I think it right now, to me, is probably as tight as it's been all season.
Yeah, still a ways to go, but for me, it's still two-man race. Cooper Flagg, Janai Broom. I would still have Flagg ahead of Broom, but I'll tell you where I was wrong. When Janai went down and Cooper Flagg started to take off, I thought, okay, this is it. He's going to separate, and we're going to be runaway national. That's just not going to happen, or at least it has not happened. And I think Broom's too good. First off, he came back. He only missed 2 games. Came back quicker than I maybe thought, and he's been awesome, consistently awesome for the team that should be ranked number 1 when the AP poll updates on Monday. So it's going to be a tight race, but I still believe it's a 2-man race. I'd still give the edge ever so slightly to Cooper Flagg right now.